I've got so many great quotes that I wish I would have said, but my mom told me I was probably 16 or 17 when I had some, but she said, what's what, so what, now what? God, man, that's brilliant, right? I don't know where she got it, but it was brilliant. And sometimes, man, it's just taking that moment and asking yourself some of those questions because it's so easy. And I've done it, man. And so many things that I teach, I'm like, hey, look, I could teach this course 1,000 times, but it's still on your 18th call at 3 a.m, you're going to get a little testy, right? It's easy to say, but it's harder to take that moment for yourself and just say, okay, what's what, so what, now what, or what am I doing, or where am I going? Why don't I feel like myself?
Hey guys, welcome to BLN. I have my first official guest. I'm very happy to have him. He was kind enough to mess with some of my stuff this morning and deal with all the technical issues that I didn't know were going to happen. I thought it was just going to be simple, but I guess it's not, right? So this podcast is kind of more about curiosity and what it really means to live a life of service without kind of losing yourself into it, right? So my guest is Walter. Grew up in West North Carolina, right? You served in the Army, spent decades in fire and EMS. I did special operations when he was in Austin, Travis County EMS, and now does a plethora of things, include protection while teaching defensive tactics and tactical medicine. But what really stood out for me from you all is your curiosity. Like even from when I first met you a long time ago, you have always been curious. You have always wanted to kind of to be better, kind of like find the edge that most people don't have. So it was his curiosity, his learning abilities, his wanting to understand people, and constantly growing that he has been a driving force behind everything he's done. Welcome, Walter. Thank you for being here. Welcome to BLN.
Man, I appreciate you letting me connect with your audience, man. And get to connect with you again. We haven't seen each other in a minute.
We haven't seen you since Medic 2. You still have the little sticker on one of the walls there.
Yeah, the distinguished.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
I love that.
Well, with that said, let me kind of dive in, man. So you said that curiosity has been a driving force in your life, right? Where do you think that came from? And how early did you notice it in yourself?
Man, early on, hands down. I had a natural curiosity, but my mom really was integral in bringing that out. Like if I wanted to try something, she'd go, okay, let's try this. Let's try this. Let's try that. She was very curious, and she had that same sort of thought process that got instilled in me just completely, 100%. And that has just grown and grown and grown since then. Man, you can't see it's behind me, but there's rows of books. There's books in the next area. There's books behind me. Man, I have this curiosity. I have this weird, obsession with learning. I rarely listen to music anymore. It's now it's either books or podcasts. I don't listen to I don't really read much fiction. I read fiction sometimes, depends, but usually it's more like historically accurate fiction. But man, I can't get enough information. I'm just curious about things, especially something that I get interested in something and I just go down rabbit holes. It's ridiculous.
That's cool, man. Yeah, I'm the same. I like to read a lot. I hardly ever listen to music anymore. It's just either podcasts or books, audiobooks, kind of same thing. So when you were growing up, you had a lot of self-reliance and perseverance. How did that shape the kind of man that you became, or like the kind of work that you were drawn to later in life?
Man, it has always been a driving force with me. Now, granted, I had the luxury of growing up in semi-rural Western North Carolina, at foothill of the Appalachian Mountains. So we already sort of had that background, right? I grew up, and granted, I'm older, right? So, born in 65, I'll be 61 tomorrow. But
how old will you?
One, bro.
51.
Yeah, 61. I'm like up there, my friend.
So, no way. I really thought you were like in your early 50s.
Damn, I love you so much. That's amazing.
Seriously, man. All that biohacking's been working. I need to start doing it more.
Dude. It's a work in progress. But man, growing up in this area, that I had the luxury of growing up before, tech was a thing, before computers, before smartphones. So I did have that luxury. And growing up, with parents who were both, grew up in the same area, self-reliance is sort of a thing, right? Everybody cans, everybody has a garden. Now again, having the fortunate or the luxury, I guess for me, it was a luxury growing up that way. What was really incredible is, again, my mom really gave me this curiosity and this like, well, you can do that yourself. And sometimes it becomes a necessity. I remember when I first moved to Austin a couple years in, I finally bought a house and I'm like, you fix this house up. And I'm like, well, I can't afford to pay anybody. I'm independently poor. I can't afford to pay. So well, I learned how to do it myself, right? So I learned how to tile and how to like put down flooring and do the different things that I needed to do. And it's always been my mindset. Now, again, I credit my folks with that because they were very much like that. And again, that's a product of the area I grew up in and super fortunate. But that's just carried on, you know. And to your point, I think it's really interesting. 13, my mom gave me 3 books on my 13th birthday, and I still have those exact same 3 copies. And one is Self-Reliance by Ralph Waldo Emerson. And man, it put the hooks in me. And it's one of them is incredible because the other 2 books were the Book of Five Rings and Sun Tzu's Art of War. But mom was always very progressive, very forward thinking, but like, man, Self-Reliance, it put that hook in me is the best way to explain it. You know, I just want to be able to function without a lot of extraneous needs. And I mean, we saw it during Ice Apocalypse in Austin. See so many people are calling 911 for like, they don't have meds, they don't have oxygen, they don't have power, they don't have all these things. And plus I'm kind of a nerd, to be honest. So I'm like, well, I need to be self-reliant. So I need, you know, these solar chargers and I need this food and I need this, that, and the other. Right. So part of it is kind of a game that I play in my head too of like, well, I might need this, you know. So that's kind of my thing.
That's cool, man. I kind of grew up similar, except I didn't listen to my mom. I didn't start really reading until, you know, my mom would always tell me, start reading, it'll change your life. And I was like, whatever, mom.
Yeah.
And then I picked up a book. Ironically, it was Tony Robbins in my late 20s. And then the kind of thing, Awaken the Giant Within. And I kind of took off from there. I haven't stopped since. And I was like, I often have that conversation with my mom saying, man, I really wish I would have listened to you earlier. My life would have been totally different.
I get that. Great book though, man. I go back and forth on time. Sometimes I don't always agree with everything, but like I like his thought process of like just, you know, being the better you. I love that ideology.
Yeah, and I like that part of it. Looking back, do you feel you chose a life of service, or do you feel like it chose you?
Oh, that's a great question, man, because I tell you, I would like to think that I chose it. I feel like it chose me, and I'll tell you why. I gave you the brief story on it. I was like, I don't know, 16, 17, living here. You know, you could become a volunteer firefighter. This is early 80s, right? Like 81, 82, right before I graduated high school. And I was like, man, that just sounds like fun. That sounds amazing. And I'd already, you know, I knew I was going to join the Army when I turned 18 and, you know, I graduated high school. But I loved doing the firefighting thing. It was just super cool and it was fun. It spoke to my personality, right? This adventure sort of, you know, because I grew up watching all these adventure shows, James Bond and Wild Wild West and all these shows, man. I wanted to be this jack of all trades and master of maybe one or two, but I wanted to like have all these adventures and that spoke to my soul. So kind of comes back around where after I got out of the Army, I was chasing like, I want a job that pays a lot of money. I want to be a stockbroker. I want to do this. I want to do that, right? Miserable with those jobs. I was a stockbroker for about a year, hated it.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, dude, miserable with it. I was going to University of Houston, and I was, you know, working for then Smith Barney, which is now defunct, right? Years ago, and I was like, I'm gonna make a lot of money, and I'm this, that, and the other. I hated that job. It was miserable, not because it wasn't my personality, right? I was a retail manager in high-end men's retail. I worked on Rodeo Drive. I was a restaurant manager. I did all these jobs, and it's getting to the point where I was turning 30. I was living in Los Angeles at the time. I got out of the Army. And my mom was living in Houston. So I'm like, I can't go back home. I'm a big town boy now. So I lived in Houston. And now, granted, I loved Houston. And people love it or they hate it. There's no in between.
You couldn't pay me enough to live there, man.
Yeah, that's the thing, man. Yeah, there's no in between. You love it or you hate it. There is no in between. I had a great time there. They're now granted again, you know, mid 80s. But man, I chased all these different ideals, these different jobs. I lived in Dallas for a while. And I was like, I get tired of that. I moved to Los Angeles. I was working there. I worked in initially in restaurants. I was a restaurant manager there. Then I worked in high-end men's retail. Back to restaurant management. I worked for TGI Fridays for a while as a manager. And then, man, I was turning 30, right? And I was like, I'm miserable. Every career I start, every career I think I want to make money or I'm going to find some meaning, I guess. And I didn't know at the time I was looking for meaning, but I turned 30 and I'm like, you know what? I'm leaving Los Angeles because not my vibe, man. I was the only person I knew who wasn't trying to get into the industry, right? I was the only person who wasn't trying to be an actor, actress, comedian, singer, and it just wasn't my vibe. Moved back home to North Carolina, and I sat down, this little apartment that I had with what little money I'd had saved, and I said, you know what? When in my life was I the happiest? When did I feel some sort of like passion for a job or some connection or something that was more fulfilling than just the stuff that I'd done. And I was looking through these ads in the paper and just kind of asking that question. And I saw this ad for firefighter. Now, interestingly enough, it was for the Navy, and I'm not going back in the Navy. I'm not going in the Navy, right? So, because ships are not my cup of tea, you know, right? So, but I was like, man, when I was in the Army, when I was a volunteer firefighter, it spoke to my soul. I loved doing it, right? I loved feeling like I was a part of something bigger than myself. And that led to like firefighter. It makes all the sense in the world. Just go back to being a firefighter. Now back then, a lot harder to be a firefighter, right? And actually, I just told a story recently. I read and so I like, which is very much my personality. I'm all in, right? I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm taking every course I can get. I'm like going to every class. I get on the volunteer fire department. One of the cool things about North Carolina is like you can get a lot of training for free if you're part of the department. So, I mean, I'm going to fire classes. I get my firefighter 1 and 2. I'm going to these rescue classes, ropes classes, anything I could get. And I read in Firehouse magazine, because I want to go to a big system. I was like, all right, I'm going to be in North Carolina long enough, and I'm going to go to a big department somewhere. Now, back then, getting on a fire department, not easy, right? Not, I mean, it's a little easier now, but like back then, man, you'd be on a list with 5,000 other people who took the test with you.
Yeah.
I mean, I applied to Dallas, San Antonio, Vegas, North Las Vegas, Boulder City, Charlotte Fire. I applied to Charlotte Fire 8 times, and they're like, no thanks. But the long and short of that, so I read in Firehouse magazine, if you want to get a big city fire job, you need to get your paramedic. And I'm like, what's the next thing? Right. So I already have my EMT. I go to intermediate class, and I'm like, this is really interesting. I really dig this. Right. It's like learning more. It's feeding that curiosity. Right. I'm like, all right, next thing, get my paramedic. Well, I got my paramedic, and I'm like, man, there's a lot of things I can do as a paramedic. Like, I don't have many fires to put out. There are few and far between other than training, right? I got that. Now, I did get lucky and get on a couple of big fires, but those are, again, 5% of fire suppression is fire suppression. The rest is, just it's all training, or it's like checking hydrants, or cleaning hose or packing hose. So I was like, man, I really got into this paramedic thing, and you can get a job as a paramedic a lot easier than you can a fire gig. Once I started really going down that EMS route, I started realizing like, well, there are EMS systems that have special operations teams, and I was like, this makes all the sense in the world. Now, for a while, I worked part time. I went part time fire, and I worked full time EMS. Then I was like, full time. I would just go back and forth these jobs, right? Because you just don't make much money here. You don't make a lot of money in EMS or fire, right? It just is what it is. I mean, cost of living's lower. You can go with that angle. But man, really getting to EMS. Then I went to Gaston EMS, which is just between here and Charlotte. A little bit bigger system than I was at before when I was at Lincoln County. But they had a special operations team, and they were standing up a tactical team. And I'm like, this is manna from heaven. This worked really well. So I got to go to Contoms. Now, I will say, I haven't been with Gaston for years and years, but man, they are brilliant at writing grants and getting training. I mean, the training I got there was absolutely, I got my confined space tech, my swiftwater rescue tech 1 and 2. I got my trench technician, hazmat technician, like all these courses, once you on the special operations team. And I went to Contoms for tactical medic, and it just was it just opened it up. But by the same token, now suddenly I'm like, well, this system's kind of small for me. I need to go to a bigger system. And that's what led me to Austin, Travis County eventually. I don't know if that answers your question per se. But to answer your question, though, I guess more succinctly would be, I always kind of had this, like, I always wanted, I get this white knight syndrome. Like, I hate when something bad happens, but I want to be there when it does because I want to mitigate chaos and fix things and make things better. And that's just my weird little quirky personality. And man, EMS, fire to an extent, but EMS really fed into that. Because how many times do we go on calls, call after call after call, and they don't need an ambulance. They just need somebody to talk to, or they need someone to hook up their cable or make them a sandwich, and those aren't the big wins. But man, sometimes when you can roll in there with the right attitude, right, which isn't always easy. When you're on 18, 19 calls, it's 4 a.m. and you're dog tired. You haven't got to eat. You haven't got to go to the bathroom. You just want to lay down for 10 minutes or just think or not think for 10 minutes. Yeah, it's not easy. Yeah, man, it's not easy. But man, I guess to answer your question would be like service really always called me back. Always called me.
I feel the same way. I didn't have it like as an extensive resume. Like I started EMS when I was 21, 22. It's an EMT, and it kind of just hooked off from there. I was never interested in fire. There was a couple of times when I would be burnt out and I wanted to leave. And then as soon as I was gone, I would be like, I miss it. Like I miss that control chaos. I talk to my family about all the time how I really like the job because I feel like I can control chaos in my own way, and that's in
Yeah.
those 30 minutes to an hour that we're with somebody. It's very for me it's actually very satisfying. I feel like I can thrive in that environment, and then you finish and you're done, and you can help the person out. Whether it be like
Oh,
a homeless guy that just needed a ride or some
yeah.
food or the diabetic patient. So it actually for me it's kind of the same thing. On that note, or what do you think all your service and all your experience gave you that if you hadn't done all this, you wouldn't have had? Like, what did it give you that nothing else could?
Man, it gave me a lot, and more so. That's an interesting juxtaposition because sometimes I feel like I didn't give back as much as I should have or could have. But I mean, that's a bit of survivor's guilt for me for leaving Austin and retiring because I know you guys are getting hammered. We always got hammered. You guys are going to continue to get hammered, and that's a rough system. And I have medics here, and I'll get to the question, but like the medics here is like, oh man, what was it like? And I'm like, bro, it's a meat grinder. It is a
It is.
and it is. Now, did I get paid extremely well for being a paramedic there? Jesus, yeah. When I tell them what I made there, they're like, oh my God. And I'm like, bro, you earn every penny. Trust me. Even on 24/72, you earn every penny and then some. They get their pound of flesh. All right. And I mean, that's just the system. It is what it is.
What did you think you gained from all of this that
From
nothing else could have given you?
from all these years, there are probably other professions that would give it to me, but man, the stress inoculation, right? I mean, you know as well as I do, you can walk into most chaos anywhere at any time, and you're like, all right, well, let's just take care of this, right? That is invaluable, right? Because I mean, how many people do we see every day just they lose their shit over something small or
Hmm.
something,
Yeah.
whereas like, we're like, it's gonna be fine, man. We'll figure it out, right? I mean, that to me is huge. The amount of learning that I got to do, and just learning just the cool stuff that we learn as paramedics, or in EMS in general. I mean, just the weird, odd things that we know. Like you can't drive by a tanker without looking at a 704M placard and go, "Oh, that's probably gasoline or kerosene," or you know what I mean? Like the
Yeah.
weirdest things that we know. This weird little eccentricities that are. I mean, I'm sure every profession has them, but I think for me, it enhanced my resilience, my self-reliance, and that stress inoculation. I mean, I've run any number of calls over what 30, almost 32 years now as a paramedic. And I see all these different things, and like now, I'm just things are so, people are like, you're so calm, and I'm like, you should get worked up, man. You know what I mean? Like that was
Yeah. This is nothing.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, and if I start getting amped up, that maybe we should start having a conversation. That's kind of like that bomb tech thing, right? You see me running, you should be
Yeah.
running too. But man, it gave me an education that I wouldn't have gotten in any other profession that I did before this, and it gave me. I think one of the really interesting things that we don't think about a lot is it gives you a look into the psychology of people. One of the best parts
Yeah.
about being
I
a
agree with
paramedic,
that one.
I get to go in other people's houses and I get to look around and see. Now, some are like you're like, oh my God, how's this person live like this? But you see pictures or you see things. And like a lot of that, I started using that to social engineer my way into patients who didn't want to talk to me or their relative called and they want to talk to me. And I'm like, oh, who's this on the wall? Or, oh, this book. Or, you could, my nephew famously said, if you give me a thread, I can knit you a sweater. And that's what I try to do, man. And I mean, I still do that working part-time in an ER as a paramedic now. But man, that is one of the things that I really was able to do is just kind of gain rapport quickly. You start to get better with like reading people better. I feel like there's so many great parts of working in EMS. I mean, there's a balance of like, well, there's a lot of crappy parts too, right? But for me, the good has far outweighed the bad. Now I do have the luxury of that hindsight, right? Because it took me about a year to have a love of medicine again and really want to be interested in like going down those paths again.
Like a year after you left
A year
EMS.
after I retired, yeah. Now, granted,
Okay.
I love cooking. My dad was sick and he Alzheimer's dementia, which is one of the big reasons I left about a year early. I bought military time to make my full three at Austin and then moved back to take care of my dad. And that was a whole other conversation. But I'd already started getting into the executive protection work, teaching, training, learning, because it was something new. It was the next thing I'm going to learn, right? And like everything, I just nerd out, right? I just go down rabbit holes. But man, it's interesting to see, looking back, like I remember applying to this ER job, and they're like, "What do you want? Why do you want to? You've done everything in EMS, right?" And I'm like, "Because I've never done anything in the ER, right?" But it took me about a good year and a half, one to get my sleep back on track. Sleeping every night is amazing first and foremost, right? And I'm like, man, I remember just being dog tired. Try to come home, take a nap for 2 hours, and just try to function for the rest of the day so you could sleep that night. I mean,
Mm.
and you're going through that now. I know, man, because I remember and I feel it, man. Again, I got some survivor's guilt because I made it out.
And you
But
made it, and not a lot of people do, man.
not a lot of
That
people
in
do.
itself is strong.
Yeah,
It's, like all that resilience that your mom taught you kind of seems to be paying off because, what's the life expectancy of a paramedic in Austin or any kind of busy system? It's what, like
yeah,
5, 10 years the most? I know I
yeah,
lasted 5 the first time I was there.
yeah,
I've been back for 5, but I have a different mentality, I think, now, so I can
yeah.
handle it differently. I'm older, wiser, hopefully, according, maybe not to my family, according to them, um, but yeah, so, I agree with you with that resilience, except I'll tell you a story. My family always tells me that, oh, well, like kind of the same thing, the resilience with stress, right? Like, oh, some airplanes falling off the skies, like, and you just walk into it kind of thing. But I do have one kryptonite, and that's
That
toll booths signs.
boost.
Ironically, I was at Houston. I didn't have change, and they still had the toll booth coin things,
Yeah,
and I didn't have change, and I was freaking out. And I was like, "Oh no, man! I'm just gonna ram it. I'm just gonna ram it. We'll pay for it." And I was
yeah,
about to press gas to ram it when she kind of like stopped me. It was like, "No, just go ask the lady behind us." And she had change and ended it. But it was the only time that they've said that they've ever seen me not
yeah.
keep it together. It was
Yeah,
just random. It was just like a toll booth, right?
yeah, exactly. Well, first and foremost, toll booths are an abomination. Right? I used to love
Agree.
blasting through
Agree.
the toll booths in the ambulance because I didn't have to pay, and I'm like, ha ha, right? But man, I tell you, Charles Bukowski, incredible writer and womanizer and a drinker, which, but
Mm.
but interesting, and he said, it's not the big things, it's not the hurricanes, it's when your shoelace breaks, that's when you lose your shit.
Mm-hmm.
And so true, man. And it's the same for me. Like I will see all these things, like on a shift, and go through all these different situations, and and then like one little thing happens, like when I get home and I'm like, God damn it, it's so weird, man. It's definitely something you got to keep an eye on because I
Yeah,
remember
definitely.
driving a little too aggressively. I mean, if you're driving a New Braunfels, like what I'm talking about, you're driving, it's like you're just getting off shift. You've had like maybe 30, 40 minutes of sleep, and you're a little edgy, you're a little on the edge, and somebody just run, you're like, this,
Yeah, they cut you off just the right way, the right amount at
yeah,
the right
yeah,
time.
yeah, man.
Yeah.
And there were days when I would catch myself. I was like, all right, buddy, just put on a podcast, put on a book. It's fine.
Mm.
Just let it go.
With all that said, like I know we've gained a lot, I think, from the job, but I know that for me, it has cost me a couple of things. What do you think it cost you? Like all these years, all the gain, experience, and resilience, but what was the price for that, do you think, for you?
Price was health. Price was health for a while. Now, I so long story short, for brevity, I was turning 40, and man, I was on the special operations teams, doing, making good money. I had a house in Lakeway, got a nice car. I had a nice life, right? And like I would wake up in the morning, I would just be depressed, miserable. I dreaded going into work. I hated the patients. I hated admin. I hated everybody. Right. And I had this moment, and actually it was with Hector Garcia Torres, as a matter of fact, and he'll know, he's heard the story 100 times. We were leaving Rescue 21. We're going to go up to the HEB. And I was just like, fuck this and fuck that. And this is bullshit. And I had this moment where I realized how my shitty attitude was affecting him. And like, because he was being super cool about it too. He's like, oh, yeah, man, I know, bro. I know. Just being cool, just being incredibly cool, just being Hector. I had this moment where I just stopped and he was like, what's up? And I'm like, hey, man, I'm really sorry, bro. I just realized how my attitude affected you. And I've said it a million times, and you know it to be true. Dude, if you have that partner, if you're with that partner that day, that makes that the longest 24-hour shift in the
Yeah,
world.
I agree.
So you got a
Partner
cool
makes a
partner
difference.
that's like, it's what it is, right, man? Let's just keep on rolling. Like, dude, makes a world of difference. After a shitty partner, I mean, just someone who's miserable and negative, dude, you're more tired, you feel worse. It rubs off on you. It really does, and vice versa. But the story is man, I had this epiphany in the truck going to HEB there in Westlake, and I was like, I'm not me anymore, man. I'm not that guy. Like, when did I become bitter and negative and miserable and just no fun to be around? Like, I don't even like myself right now. I mean, that was a hard look. And I don't know why or where or how that revelation came to me. But a couple of days later, I'm in jujitsu, and this guy puts me in this weird move. And his name's Brian Moon. He was a sergeant APD. And I'm like, I had never seen this before. put this in this weird move, right? And it was actually lockdown, and it's part of the 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu system. And I was like, what was that, man? I've never even seen anything like that. He's like, it's Eddie Bravo, but you got to get the, he's like, you get his book, but you got to go through his pop bullshit. Long story short, I read this little diatribe he has about marijuana. Up until this point, and I have a point to this, I promise. He talked about how, I thought, who's smoking pot after high school or college? You know what I mean? Like it's bullshit, like I just, and I always consider myself an open-minded person. So he lays out this well-articulated argument for the legalization of marijuana and what it's done for him. And I'm like, well, that's a pretty good argument. Let me look into this. So I look subsequently, I realized, thinking I'm open-minded, I realized like I had been closed-minded to a lot of things because I just believed whatever the narrative of whatever this, that, and the other was, right? And I always thought I was a critical thinker, but not, dude, this led me down this road of like, well, because then the next obvious question, if I've been closed-minded about this, what else don't I know? And dude, it opened up, that went into fitness, into nutrition, into biohacking. I mean, the yard days, right? When I went full bore. Like I got into keto, I got into bulletproof coffee. And this was like what, early 2000s, before any of that was cool,
Yeah, it wasn't popular yet.
Dude, it was when it was all first starting, man. And I just went and I started feeling better. I started waking up in the mornings like, even though it was gonna be a crappy shift, I'm like, I'm ready to go. I can rock and roll this thing all day long, right, man? And it just the change in just nutrition in my, and now at the same time, I started expanding like my thought processes, right? I started reading different books, reading all these different ideals, these different philosophies. I looked at Stoicism, I looked at Buddhism, and I've looked at Buddhism a little bit before because it's got a certain fascination for me. But man, just all these different philosophies, and I just went down all these crazy rabbit holes. I remember Steve Bush was my partner at the time. He's retired now, but he was like, man, I don't even know what you're reading or doing today, because I'm always talking about this or that or jujitsu or like this theory, of like magical mushrooms and how they helped us evolve in our brain, right? Or like Rupert Sheldrake or all these things that like are so fringe at the time. And to somewhat, I was talking about DMT, way back in like the early thousands, because I was just learning all these things. And so,
yeah, they were kind of taboo at the time.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. But what the toll it took at the time was my mental and my physical health. Cause I was lifting heavy. I was doing jujitsu, still, kind of pudgy, putting on weight. I felt like shit, and I'm like, but I'm eating wheat bread and that's supposed to be good for me and processed food and right, and all these things, man. And it was like this. I had this renaissance. Like I couldn't read enough books. I couldn't learn enough things. It was this weird, just crazy renaissance at the age of 40, and I think back now to it, and it's really interesting how these weird little times in your life happen. But anyway, long and short of the question, or the answer to the question is, man, it took a lot from me physically and mentally, but I got lucky in that I had that epiphany, that moment of clarity, as they say in Pulp Fiction, right? And I had that moment where I was like, hey, I'm not me. I got to do something about this, right? So, I don't know how much luck, how much was just fate, or, I don't know, manifest destiny. I don't know, but whatever it was, man, I had that moment and haven't looked back since.
Yeah, well, I think you probably had so I've been thinking of it kind of like a theory, and it's probably well known. It's just something that came to my mind of how to be kind of really resilient in hard jobs like the ones we have. It could be, it doesn't necessarily have to be EMS. It could be firefighters, police, nurses, all that stuff. You have to have like 3 little disciplines, right? You have to have relationships, you have to have health, and you have to have mental clarity. And I think if you can combine those 3, you end up with a pretty good resilient outcome, career-wise. But if one of those fails, everything kind of falls apart. So because if you're not fit, then you're gonna be taken out by injury, or if you don't have the mental resilience, by reading, learning, all these other things to make you a little stronger mentally and emotionally, then you end up going down depression and going down what that takes you. And then if you don't have the relationships to base that on, to bounce them off, I think you end up depressed. And so I think you need those 3 kind of in a triangle all together, intertwined, to kind of really come together ahead. I'm lucky that I'm pretty happy with where I'm sitting in my life right now, because I think I have all 3. I'm 45 now. I try to take care of myself, even though I haven't hit the gym in a little bit, but just life. I just like you, I try to stay mentally healthy by reading a lot. Same like you, like Stoicism. What's his name? I can't think of it. Viktor Frankl is one of my favorite books.
Incredible book. Not an easy book to read.
No,
but
I read it.
man's
I have it on audiobook, and then I have
yeah,
it on
way to do.
reading. So usually at the beginning of every year I read it, just to kind of take me on over for the year,
It's an incredible
which
book.
I need to do. I haven't done it this year; just started. So yeah, kind of those three things is kind of like what I'm basing my ideas on to kind of pass on, because I feel like those are the ones that are probably going to help people in high stress jobs the most.
Absolutely.
So you 30 years of EMS, doing all these other things, you became highly respected. I remember you from Austin.
I wasn't
Everybody
everybody's.
was out to, everybody was to see you leave. Was there a fear in stepping away from a role where you'd like deeply and competent and respected, and stepping out into the world to something different?
Man, that's a good question because it was harder than I thought it would be. And I knew it was coming, right? And I had a couple of those. I had one leaving the special operations team because I tore the labrum in my right shoulder, right? Not enough to get
Mm.
surgery. I had to make a choice. Like, am I going to be able to make this PT test and just keep, the swim was just crushing my shoulder. It was just making it worse and worse. And I'm like, am I going to need surgery? What am I doing? Right. Now I got lucky that was sort of segueing into the defensive tactics stuff. So I had something else to put my energy into. Right. And, I have to have some sort of other project, just if you're just running calls, that's going to be tough road to hoe. I'm gonna be honest. Right. Cause it wears you
Yeah.
down and it wears you out. Right. You have to have something else that is like some sort of, I don't know, maybe you could say a guiding principle or some sort of their passion to drive you. But that for me, it was harder leaving special operations than I thought because, 5 years on a team here in North Carolina, then 19 and a half with a team in Austin. That's it's harder to leave than I thought it would be. I mean, I knew it was coming and I was leaving on my terms, which I really wanted to do. I didn't want to just be like, all right, your shoulder's fucked, you're out. I didn't want it to be that. Right. So I was lucky in that I could leave on my own terms, but that was a little bit harder than I thought it would be. But again, I knew that if I had something to pour my energies into, that would carry me, and it did. Now, what I didn't expect from leaving EMS altogether or retiring was, man, suddenly I didn't have a job to go to. And there's a part of it that you've done something for so many years. I've had a job since I was 16. Suddenly you don't have a job to go to. You don't have to be anywhere unless it's something you've planned, right? I'm not beholden to somebody. That was a weird transition for me because I've always had some sort of structure, someplace I had to be, things I had to do. Right now, I've always had like personal structure. I've got routines and things that I do. I'm very much I'm an odd. We'll get into it in a little bit, but like I'm a creature of routine, but I'm also a creature of breaking routine because that's the weird side of executive protection for me. Is like I don't take the same routes home. I do just weird stuff like that. But it's more to me. It's fun. Nobody's probably following me. I mean, maybe, but I doubt it. Right? I like to do a surveillance detection route sometimes, but it's more just me being a nerd, to be quite honest. But man, leaving was harder than I thought it was be. Harder than I thought it would be, and it hit me a couple of times. I was like, fuck, I don't like. I mean, I know where I was going. I know what I was doing. Like I know I'm going to go home and take care of my dad, but that's tough because you become a caregiver again in a different way, right? And it's harder than doing what we do in EMS because you don't have a dog in the fight. It's not you don't know this person. Odds are that you're picking up. Family becomes a whole other conversation. But
And you're only there for 5 minutes versus,
yep, yep. And I don't have a dog in that fight. I'm like, all right, let's get you to the hospital. All right, I'll see you later. Gotta go pick up somebody else. But man, it was a harder transition than I thought it would be. But now by the same token, I knew something was coming. I knew some difficulty of it was going to be coming. I didn't know what it was going to be or how it was going to feel, but I knew I had to have something to stopgap that, something else to put my energy and drive in. Like I had the DT thing started when I left Spec Ops. I had the EP thing working, and honestly, the podcast was kind of doing pretty well, which I was pretty stoked about. Now it's always in the red, and I don't really give a shit. It could be in the red for the rest of my, but it gives you. I mean, and you'll find this, man. It's going to be the most incredible thing you've ever done because it'll literally save your soul. It saved my soul in EMS, absolutely. Because there are times when, like, I couldn't get the DT thing going. I'm trying to go through admin. I mean, we know how they are, right? Which is nice to be able to speak freely about that now, because I couldn't then.
admin is
But man,
great.
yeah, man. But like the podcast, like it gave me a reason to reach out and talk to other people. People like, people I have no business talking to. I'd reach out to authors and different people and they're like, yeah, I'll come on. And I'm like, oh shit, now I got to produce. Right. But man, it'll be the best thing you've ever done. If you stick with it and you'll love it. You will love it. Cause I recommend it to anyone. I don't care if there's a trillion podcasts out there. Starting a podcast is one of the best things you'll ever do because one, it makes you accountable to you. It makes you think and it gives you something else besides what you do, right? And I'd be curious to talk to you in about a year, and see what you've done with the podcast and how it's changed what you.
We'll revisit this in a later on.
Man,
See how
I'm
it
all in.
goes.
I am all in.
Gonna be all stressed out, like, no, I'm just playing. No, honestly, like you were an inspiration for me, kind of starting this podcast, among other things, because I saw you kind of like I've been tracking your journey with it, and everybody says like, I wish I could do a podcast too. Well, everybody says that, but they don't do it. So after reading, and I blame Gary Vee for it because he's just, how I don't know if you follow him closely, but he's like, just post it, do whatever. Like I just, I've been planning it for about 6 months, and I rewrote the first episode like 20 times and bought all the camera, and I have all this stuff. And ironically, I bought the camera, but I bought the wrong one because it's a GoPro and it doesn't really work well for recording inside. So now I'm gonna have to try to figure something else out.
Yeah.
Spend $500 on a nice little GoPro media mode, and I'm filming with my phone. But I'm looking forward to this transition as I start this podcast, because I kind of like you, I'm hoping to learn a lot, not just about myself, but others. And hopefully that I can, I've been doing this for 20 something years, and I feel like I'm pretty unscathed by it so far. So maybe I did something right that others can, pick up from. And I'm pretty sure I did some bad stuff that people don't need to pick up, but I'm hoping that I can share the good stuff, and then mostly interview people that can have something meaningful to give to, and not just EMS. I don't want this to be just EMS. I want it to be anybody that is really going through like a hard job, a hard time, something that is difficult. And then not just like for me, watching a couple of podcasts really gave me some ideas and inspirations. Hopefully this can be like that for something else. And like you said, it's that accountability to myself to do something different and strive out of that comfort zone that most people don't have. Because I have to say, one of the things that I didn't realize the most is how uncomfortable this actually is.
Yes.
I'm looking at the two little dots from my iPhone, and it's like, don't look at him, look at upstairs, because he's, it's definitely difficult. A learning curve that I'm happy to go through.
Yeah, man. It's interesting when the first few episodes, you're gonna be way too critical of yourself, right? I mean, I still am, and I joke like I listen to the person I'm talking to, listen to me because I'm dog shit, right? But it's interesting because you learn your little verbal tics, like mine. Now, some I tried to get rid of. I tried to get rid of the ums and the ahs, that led to writing out all the script beforehand, right? I mean, the other thing I realized I do is write. So, and it's such a part of my vernacular and the way I talk, right? And when I teach, one of the things when I teach class, when I teach anything for them, I'm like, look, I'm just going to tell you right now, I say right all the time. So I just hashtagged it for the show. I mean, I even did a couple of shot glasses, a giveaway that just said hashtag right and had the Distinguished Savage logo on there, right? Not cheap to do on the shot glasses, but man, some things you just got to embrace about yourself, and some things you just got to be like, okay, I want to get rid of that, right? But just you got to be easy on yourself, because man, it's so hard to be like, God, I sound like an idiot just then. But I will tell you, and you probably already experienced this, it's the vulnerability of putting something out in the world, right? And just like sending off your baby into the world, and somebody's going to be like, oh, this is dog shit, And I've only had a few people ever like really didn't care for the podcast that actually, left. I mean, it wasn't people I know, like people leave reviews or something, and I'm like, all right, but I mean, somebody's always going to have something to say. When somebody said like Michael Jordan's not hating on anybody, it's only people who are doing worse than you that are hating on you, right? So that's kind of how I look.
Yeah, I like that. I hear that a lot often. Like the people that are providing the hate are usually not where you want to be, or they're not they're not hating from above.
No.
And most people that are above will root for you.
Yeah.
Because they want to see you succeed as well. And I'm expecting that. I'm interested to see how I handle it once it comes. I think I'll be okay. I have a plan. Like I'm like, if somebody responds something negative, like I was just thinking of just responding like, thank you for your input, and then leaving it be, not really taking heart to it, but we'll see how it goes. Again, we might revisit. I'll let you know how it goes the next time we meet.
Man. Wait for it.
I'm kind of jumping on some of the questions just so I don't take too much of your time. But so the next question that I have is, if somebody that's listening, whether it be paramedics, nurses, firefighters, anybody that listens to this podcast, my accent, that's one of the things. My accent is going to come in. I'm going to have to work on that. If somebody that's feeling restless, like they have outgrown a chapter, but don't know what to do next, what would you want them to consider?
Man, I've been there. I heard, and I can't think of who said it, but I saw a thing not long ago. In fact, I wish I could remember who said it. He was talking about how Some of those people that just like they talk about everything that's bad that's happened, just miserable people, and they've made this suffering a part of their life. And it's easy to do in EMS, easier to do than regular. Well, I mean, I don't know. Every job has its difficulties, right? But I think EMS is it's hard to stay fit. It's hard to be rested. It's hard to have a family life. It's hard to do a lot of things in public safety as a whole. And man, it's taking that moment and realizing, like, all right, and my mom said it best. I've got so many great quotes that I wish I would have said, but my mom told me I was probably 16 or 17 when I had some problem. And I don't even know what the problem was, but she said, "What's what, so what, now what?" And I'm like, God, man, that's brilliant, right? I don't know where she got it, but it was brilliant. And sometimes, man, it's just taking that moment and asking yourself some of those questions, because it's easy to just, it's so easy. And I've done it, man. And so many things that I teach, I'm like, hey, look, I could teach this course 1,000 times, but it's still on your 18th call at 3 a.m, you're going to get a little testy, or that thing, right? It's easy to say, but it's harder to take that moment for yourself and just say, okay, what's what, so what, now what, or what am I doing, or where am I going? Why don't I feel like myself? Why am I going down? I mean, it's easy to self-medicate in the job that we do. It's easy to drink, to whatever it is, man. It's easy to, it's especially easy to overeat, right? Because I mean,
especially with all the food that they have at the hospitals.
Austin, yeah, there is no EMS break room at the hospital I work at now. There's a little
Oh,
employee
really?
break. Yeah, no. And I always tell the paramedics, I'm like, man, you should see the break rooms at Del Seaton and
I
South
wonder if
Austin.
it's a Texas thing, because I know San Antonio has some pretty good ones too.
Yeah, man, I think that's a thing there. Like I was like, oh, we got a room we can go into. I'm like, do we only have a place they can sit down and write report? They use ESO too. They have a place let's go on the truck and do it. I'm like, oh man, dude, I like Austin was very an interesting animal. It makes me think of something else, but it's too much to get into. But the long and short of that is, man, is dude, you start feeling, for me, or I should say, I'm gonna clarify that. When it's time for a next chapter, I start feeling restless. Something's missing. Something's not right. Something's off, and I can't put my finger on it. That's usually when I need to start taking a moment and looking like, all right, where am I at? What am I doing? Where do I want to go? Now, for me, and everybody's like, New Year's resolutions and all that, and I get that, but man, between the 31st, or more actually, the 1st and the 9th, which is my birthday, man, that is my time to, and I've done this since I was a kid. Again, something else my mom did. My mom, when I was a kid, New Year's Eve, she'd give me and my sister a little notebook, and she'd like, write down your resolutions or write down your goals. But the way she spun it, and I love this, right? Because she did a couple of things that are brilliant, and I should market them or something, right? The one is write down. It wasn't resolutions. It was more like write down your goals and what you want to accomplish this year. It wasn't resolutions. It was like, what do you want to accomplish this year? What do you want to do? Right. And then on July 4th, she'd give us a notebook and she's like, what do you want to declare independence from? And I'm like, that's brilliant.
That's a good one.
I know.
That's a good one.
That chick. but I just thought that was, and so those are two things that I do every year. Now I used to be hard on myself. I got to get it done by the 31st. I got to be, but I'm like, now it's between the 1st and the 9th. And it usually involves a couple of things. It's like, all right, what things from the list last year didn't get done? What things do I want to work on this year? And it kind of gets down to that what's what, so what, now what kind of idea, right? Like, if something didn't get done last year, was it really that important? Maybe, maybe not, but I got to suss that out, so I got my usual list for the year, right? And then around July 4th, I'll start thinking about like, all right, what's not serving me, right? And so this year it's going to be like, dude, I have stuff upon stuff, and we got rid of a ton of stuff when we moved from Texas, but I'm like, I may need this. I may need that. I may need this. So, and I've got things that I'm like, I should sell this, make a little money on it, get rid of it, give it away, or give it to someone who would use it more than I would, because there's some things I'm like, all right, I have 3 of these copies of the same book. That's ridiculous, right? So just things like that. But that's one of the big things this year is going to be like getting rid of things I don't want, being a little better at everyday organization, right? It's easy to let the house get cluttered. And when the house is cluttered, my mind's a little cluttered, if that makes sense. Now, granted, I have a lot more time to do that, which is nice because, like, again, I'm not working on 24. But, just some of the small things. For me now, it's sharpening those small things and working on, like, new skill sets. I'm trying to teach myself how to suture now because, I watch PAs in the ER suture, and I'm like, I need that skill. Shit. Right. So just weird stuff like that. But that's kind of the thing, man, is just finding that next chapter isn't always easy. And I've had people like, like, I don't even know what it is. The hardest thing, and I've said this to close friends, people I love, I'm like, because they'll say like, well, I don't know what that thing is. And I'm like, have you looked? And I'm like, well, no, right? If they're being honest, no, and I'm like, well, what do you like to do? What's something you're interested in? I mean, you don't have to go and like change jobs right away. Like I have a friend who, he was talking about like, I don't know, man, I don't know what I want to do. And I'm like, dude, you like taking pictures. Why don't you just get a decent little camera and start taking photos? See what you think about that. I mean, just learn something new, right? Because that can lead into something. I mean, there's so many things I'm like, it'd just be cool to do exec protection course. And, and now at least they're working for KDI, which has been incredibly good to me, and that's led to like getting to do other training and doing weird, sneaky squirrel shit that I, like taking surveillance courses, following people in cars. It's fun, man.
That's
Will I
cool.
probably, will I actually ever like to get to do full on detail? Like, I've done some details, but like, will I get to do the whole counter surveillance thing? Probably not. But man, it's fun to do in training, man. It's fun to do, and it's fun to just mess around with every day. Like, let me see if I can follow this car before they get weird. You know what I mean? But the
That's
point is,
funny.
man, is just if you're coming to that point where you're like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I know I'm miserable, man, sometimes you just got to ask the hard questions. And that's the toughest part. Looking in the mirror, man, or looking into the abyss, as but it's not always easy. Not always easy, but it's got to be done, man. You got to have a
Yeah,
conversation.
it does. So in this
Long-winded answer.
current chapter, what does being all in mean to you?
It's a good question. Really good question. I'm going to tell you why. I am terrible at being partway in, right? Now, I just made a post. I saw something that Kanetta put on Facebook. Love Kanetta. And she was talking about being burned out. And I'm like, man, because for a while, probably the last couple of years at Austin, I was like, you know what? I'm a mercenary. Services rendered for amounts tendered. But I am so bad at not caring. Like, I am so bad. Like, if I care about something, if I do something, it's hard for me to not be all in, because if I'm not, it hurts. Now, I think Tim Ferriss said it best. Like, if it's not a hell yeah, it's a hell no. And that's a
Yeah.
great way to put it, right? And it's hard, especially because EMS takes they take their pound of flesh. The profession takes its pound of flesh from you, for sure, right? So it's hard to not care, man. And some days I would have to say, okay, today I'm not going to really care. I'm going to do my job, and I'm going to do the best of my ability. And I'm going to take care of these patients, but I can only care so much today, right? I've got to have some kind of firewall between me and everything else today. But most times, I was good, man. And I think that the biggest thing on being all in is like it. Like, again, it comes down to, if it's not a hell yeah, then it's a hell no. Why are you even putting your energies into that? I mean, sometimes you gotta. I was fond of saying in Austin, we had the golden handcuffs, because it's hard to leave. I got paid good money in EMS, and I look at now what I make in an ER is a lot better than what I would make on a truck here if I went part time on a truck. And I get to learn a lot more. Whole other conversation. But man, for me, it's hard. If I'm in it, I'm all in. If not, I'm not very good at kind of half-assing things. I really suck at half-assing things. That's I guess that's the best way to answer it.
Yeah, that's good, man. That's good. That's kind of why one of the reasons I named it that way is because I think I have some, for me, on the kind of accountability side, is like I have so many strings pulling, things that I want to do, things that I want to accomplish, be a good family man, be a good provider, be a good, anything I do. So this for me was kind of an accountability to try to keep myself being all in into everything that I try to do to try to make it a success if possible,
Yeah,
or at least you gave it your all, and if it didn't
yeah.
work out, right? But you tried, and you can, whenever it's time, to be buried. Did you regret your life decisions, or did you wish you could have done something? Kind of, that's where I'm kind of striving. All
Something
right,
you
so
said. Side note, man,
yeah,
something you said in that first episode you did, I was really hit home with me. It's like I found myself. You said I found myself showing up for patients, showing up for this, showing up, but not showing up for myself. And I was like, "Fuck, that's pretty good, man," because that really articulates the point well. And I thought that was really eloquent the way you put it.
thanks, man.
That is good.
20 rewrites, right?
Unfamiliar, my friend.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, man. I put a lot of work into that first episode, and it took me forever to actually press post. But now we're rolling. This is two,
I get it, man. I was doing a
Um,
podcast 5 years before I started it, so I get it.
okay, so I have one of the things that I want to do is
Yeah.
I want to end the podcast with some inspiration from Tim Ferriss. I'm pretty sure you've read Try My Mentors and Tools of Titans, but he has some questions that I really, really enjoyed that I kind of used I took them to for myself, and whenever I was
I
interviewing
told them
people
to.
for jobs, I would use them all the time.
Yeah.
All right, so it's just a quick roundup questions from inspired by Tim Ferriss. What book have you recommended or gifted the most?
That's going to be a tie between Emerson's Self-Reliance and Book of Five Rings,
Mm.
easily. Those are the two books I've gifted the most. Those are the two books I recommend the most. Now, some books, it depends on the person. Like some things they're into, I'm like, oh, you really dig this book. But those two books, by far, throughout my life, I have gifted more than any other book.
That's
Those
cool,
two.
man. Those are good books. What habit has had the biggest positive impact in your life?
A morning routine. A morning
Morning
routine
routine.
that I set and I stick to. Now, it changes some. I've changed. I'll try different things, right? But when I got into the whole biohacking thing, up early. I just recently got one of those little small saunas, that you can actually sit in. So I'm adding that in, which is amazing, right? It, but the two things that I feel like the most, and they sort of are coincide, is a morning routine, right? Whatever that is for you, that routine, and a meditation practice. And I know everybody says a meditation practice, but man, one of the best things I've done is meditation and sticking to it, because it really does it allows me to sleep better. Now, I will say it allowed me to, like, when you get that 10, 15 minutes when you can lay down when you're on shift, like I have a little mantra that I go through, and I can actually kind of get some rest with that, right? I do put in some neural beats. I had some neural different apps for my phone. I put the little headphones in, neural beats, and even with a 15, 20-minute nap, I felt way better than if I just watched TV or did nothing, right? Because it's almost like a reset. But man, a
Mhm.
morning routine and a meditation practice, it's a practice. It is a practice, because your mind's all over the place. You're like, oh, I should have got that. And you're like, and you just kind of observe and go back to it. And there's tons of apps. There's a lot of great books. There's incredible podcasts and books on meditation. I would highly recommend meditation, and just having some routine in the morning, whatever it is, right? Whatever it is you do. Because for me, getting up late, or getting up just in time to get in the shower to get to work, like I'm already behind the curve, right? And I just need that time to, like, get into my own head, I guess. Those are my two.
That's cool, man. Yeah, I do a little bit of that. When I usually do NSDR, whenever I'm in, like at a station or a busy station, I'll just put
Yeah,
in the headphones and do that, and it's been grateful. This one might be easy for you from something that you said earlier, how in July 4th you always have that, what am I letting go of? What belief did you let go that made your life better all around?
man. You know what? You sent me the questions beforehand, and I appreciate that. But I thought about that one a little bit. And the biggest belief that I let go of, and I don't know exactly when I let go of it, I can't pinpoint a specific time. But growing up as a kid, I always had these limitations in my mind of like, well, I couldn't do that, or I can't do this, or I'm not that smart, or I'm not this, that, or the other. Right? And as much as my mom was very, my dad as well, he was more of a quiet guy, but my mom was like, you can do anything, like most moms are, and I just never could buy into it until I actually bought into it myself. I don't know exactly when that started happening. I need to sit down and kind of think about pinpointing when that maybe was, because now I'm kind of curious. But man, letting go of like the fact that, like, even if you just go from like, oh, I can't do that, to well, I might be able to do that. And I think a lot about something else Ferris says, when you start up in a business, early, fail often, because that's going to get you to your goal faster. And it's true, man. So many people are afraid of failure. And I get that, because, man, I do. I have such imposter syndrome. I'm like, I don't know, who am I to be talking on a podcast? I'm just some yahoo,
Oh,
But
I feel that.
every once in a while I have something good. I mean, and you're always going to have that, man. I'm telling you, with the podcast, you're always going to have that. But that would probably be the thing, then, is letting go of those self-limiting beliefs. And you know what? I'll recommend one other book that I just read maybe a year ago. And it was really fast. I've recommended a couple of people. Nobody's really taken me up on it yet, but I would highly recommend it. And it sounds woo-woo as can be, but it's called Changing the Habit of Being Yourself. And it's pretty goddamn good, because it did really allow me to be more the precious present, as they say. So get rid of that. But that, man, that book was really it talks about meditation, but it's a lot of self talk about, like, hey man, like, get your shit together, like, you're not an idiot, it's gonna be good.
If you could put a message on a billboard for millions of people to see, what would it say?
Man, I thought about that one a lot too, because there's things that I like to tend to say, and I'll tell you, I'll steal a quote from my nephew. And again, I wish I would have said this, but it's so true, man. Keep your gratitude higher than your expectation. But now, if I could do two billboards, the other one would say, whatever you do or dream you can do, begin it because boldness has genius and power and magic in it. And it's a quote from Goethe, but man, it's just such a great quote. But the one I tend to somehow always, it comes up on the podcast. It comes up in a lot of different things, and my nephew told me, and I'm like, God, I don't know where he got it, but man, keeping your gratitude higher than your expectation. And it's not always easy, but man, like that hits hard. And I'm like, God, that's good. I wish I'd have said that.
Yeah, it is. I've always thought about it. Like, I think one that I would put would be, it's kind of simple, but it says you're not that important.
Yeah.
And it kind of sounds weird, but it's, I think for me, a lot, especially people with anxiety, like not everybody's looking at you. Not everything that you
Yeah.
do is going to be important. If you say the wrong thing, you're gonna be in their minds for like 2 seconds, and they're gonna think on their own because everybody's looking inward and not outward. So for me, like I think that one was, I've always thought about that. That's you're not that important.
Yeah.
You make a mistake, you're not going to be judged by it. They're going to move on. You're the only one that's criticizing yourself about it. And I think that one is just because I used to be like that. It took me a while to realize that.
Yeah. Oh, I totally get it. Yeah.
Well, Walt, I really appreciate you allowing me to interview you today for my first Be All In interview. But like I've always respected you, your curiosity, your passion for learning. I think a lot of people that are listening will realize that growth doesn't always mean moving faster. It just means really understanding yourself and who the person that you're trying to become. This show is called Be All In. I believe that staying curious, disciplined, and honest is one of the hardest paths that I can take. I think that incorporates it very well. Thank you for everything you've done, your teaching, your time in Austin, your time in the military.
Yeah, man.
For everybody listening, just don't ignore curiosity and keep learning. Anything that where can people find you, man? Like aside from a Distinguished Savage, or what are you working on? Anything that you want to?
Distinguished Savage is the main place. There's the website, thedistinguishedsavage.com, Distinguished Savage on Instagram. I'm on Facebook a little bit here and there, but I'm very rarely on there. And the podcast is on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. It's on everything except for YouTube, right? So all the Audible. I will say there's a prize for me coming on, and that's you got to come on my show now.
Definitely. Anytime, man. Anytime.
Hey, there you go.
Thank you. Always remember, be all in. Bye, y'all.